So we are going in the Wayback Machine today. We are going to be looking, because I love doing this because it's so easy to get caught in the hype, the hotness, the wave of what's now. 2 years on crowdfunding. 2 years ago, crowdfunding March. Where are these games now? One, do you even have them yet? Two, how are they thought of? Three, are they even thought of nowadays? That is the thing, because it's not that we're looking for new games. There's new games coming out all the time. There's too many new games. I covered 20 games last week on crowdfunding, but we're looking at games that are not only amazing, because good is no longer good enough, that we love to play, that can hit the table and that will stay in the collection, right? So let's take a look at these. Did they pass that? What are my thoughts on them as someone who covered them, as someone who may have owned a few of them or backed a few of them? Let's take a look, because March was a very interesting month. When I went through this list, I was not expecting to get, I pulled out 13 games. 13 that I said, okay, this is going to be interesting. Let's see now comparatively. This is almost twice as much as I covered 2 years ago in January and February for the past two that I've done looking back. So without further ado, let's do this. What's up first? Well, what's up first is Mythic Battles freaking Ragnarok. Where the freak is that? Because, I mean, Mythic Battles Ragnarok, Mythic Battles Pantheon. Do you have too much Mythic Battles? Yes, this is something I backed of, and I backed too much of it, and I regretted even doing extras on the pledge manager. My best advice is always just get the core pledge, and this is one of those that I haven't played through half the expansions of the original. Are you like me? This is also a very interesting game because it's widely regarded when people talk about it as one of the best 1v1 skirmish games. It's also completely ignored by the vast majority of the actual content creation community. It is. It is. There are next to no reviews on Board Game Geek. Is that surprising to you? It's surprising to me. Ragnarok, though. Awesome. Awesome. As Guardian Godpool. Oh, man, this is going to be awesome. You know, it's going to be Norwegian, Scandinavian. Those elements, the ones you're very familiar with, especially with the rise of the Marvel creative universe that they're putting out there, the Marvel Cinematic Universe, creative universe. I mean, they're overlapping the same thing, right? But that was what was cool. Like, you saw a lot of things that you were more familiar with, depending on which mythology you were, you know, grew up with or learned about in school. And so I was really hyped. I spent too much money on this. Why don't I have it yet? Well, let's go to the crowdfunding page, because pre-campaign, I was probably an 8. Post-campaign, I was probably a 5 because I realized I couldn't stop myself from backing it, and I spent too much money on it, and I still don't have it, and you know, here we are. The latest update is only from January 13th, so nearly 2 months ago at the time of me filming this, and we're doing some production. We've got some more models here. I mean, tons of model pictures. Okay. But as you scroll all through these pictures, there's not really any more firm timetable of when we're gonna get this, because all this is, as it says up here at the top, is topics and visuals. Now, production, they say, is gonna be May to June. Okay, and announce a potentially longer delivery time instead of a shorter, appealing one. Basically, they're saying we're gonna underpromise and hopefully overdeliver. But if you go back over here to the original page, you'll notice that this said June 2022. You're gonna be lucky sometime Q3 of 2023 if things go moderately on time schedule-ish. And we haven't heard from them since the Chinese New Year, so that could be even pushed back further, and you could be talking Q4, and that wouldn't surprise me. Again, Monolith is one of those weird companies. I have no clue what's going on behind the scenes. They're holding it very close to the vest, not doing a lot of other crowdfunding projects. And so, I mean, I guess that's good that they aren't overreaching, but you can make a very, very, very good point that this vastly underachieved with only $2.4 million, considering how successful and how well thought of the first one was. So take that food for thought right there. Now, next up, this one's going a slightly different direction. Sentinels of the Multiverse, the second, third, fourth edition, whatever you want to call it, the definitive edition from Greater Than Games. And they said, okay, brand new take, classic comic book card game, 1 to 5 player controlling your hero with their unique deck, having an environment and a master plan and a villain and, you know, all that stuff. We're redoing the artwork. We're redoing the graphic design. We're putting out a new product, but, you know, it's a new product, though. It's a new product. And that was what it was marketed as. And they said, okay, we're going to give you foils. Foils were the main reason to get it on crowdfunding 2 years ago. Since then, we are now, I think, approaching what, the third expansion that they're putting out that's also going to be launching this month on crowdfunding as well. It's actually launching over on BackerKit. BackerKit. Well, that's a whole nother conversation. But with this one, you know, the reviews have been relatively positive. Now, this is the problem is the reviews also on Board Game Geek, for the most part, are looking through rose-tinted glasses. Meaning the people who got this are the people majorly who loved it the first time around. There's less, considerably less, that said, okay, you know what? I'll get this game and I didn't like it before and this changed my opinion of it. And to be frank, I'm one of those people. And I've now had it on my trade list because I want to try it out. I want to see. You know, this is a great next step up for the kids, and you know, having them have their own deck, a la something like Marvel Dice Throne instead of a competitive but more of a cooperative. Yes, I know there's not nearly the overlap in terms of mechanics, but what I'm saying is with Marvel Dice Throne, they control their own stuff. Self-contained, you know, cooperative solitaire, if you will, multiplayer solitaire. And that's what I'm hoping I can do, instilling a new sense of independence. And this would be a nice game because it's also different than, say, like Marvel Legendary. It raised over $500,000 on crowdfunding the first time around. That's not insignificant. Even 2 years ago, with this, you can make the argument of about a fourth edition. So how does it stand up? Well, on Board Game Geek, it has tremendous ratings right now. Again, mind you here, you have a very selective portion of things, 600 ratings, not many at all, but people who got it and people who presumably had the other editions like this, and is an 8.5 overall. Now, again, I'd love to see an expanded, okay, give this to a bunch of people who didn't like it the first time around. Are they going to be as pleased with it? You got the expansions. Sorry, I was wrong. Only 2 expansions. Screw that up. I knew I was going to. Desperation here is the new one launching, and Rook City Renegades is the one that is, I believe, in the process or recently fulfilled as well, which again is being relatively well thought of when you go over here. So adding more things, adding new keywords, streamlining, giving more of what you want and less of what you don't want. That's what you're looking for with a new edition of a game. And so far, again, bias being what it is, seems to be doing that in some way, shape, or form. I'd probably disagree if you saw there that the weight of the expansion was ranked at this 3.2, but you know, I'm looking to try it out at some point myself. I'm willing to give it a second or third chance. So that's completely okay. Pre-campaign, 4, 5. Post-campaign, about the same. Kids getting that age though, okay, I'll go to a 6. Am I looking to pick it up in a trade? Absolutely. Am I going to go out of my way to buy it separately? Probably not. So that's kind of where things are at though. Surprising and doing better than I would have predicted 2 years ago. So that's also nice to see sometimes. I like that. I like good things happening in our hobby. As much as, you know, I get the comments and I know I'm the angry man shouting at clouds in the videos, but it's fun too as well, right? So take it for what you will. Now we're going to go a slightly different direction. This one is probably the most surprising one on this list. If you had told me that this game was going to be widely picked up at retail, it's going to be panned as one of the top 10 games of the year for like 2022, and it's going to show up at like Target, widely available, I would have said, really? And then I reviewed it and I played it and I said, yeah, this is really fun. It's not fun enough for me personally to probably keep in my collection long term, but it's a great game and long shot the dice game. Like, this is taking a betting aspect of things. It's mixing it with a roll and write. It only raised $114,000 on crowdfunding, which again, I guess, actually, comparatively to all this other stuff, you know, it's peanuts. But for a roll and freaking write, right? Because the guy's name also is Roland Wright. That's why I'm at Roland Wright. That's a lot of money. That's a lot of money on crowdfunding for something like that. And so just that alone, if you had said just that alone, I would consider that a success. This wasn't on my radar at all. Like, this was like 2. And then the designer reached out to me and said, hey, you want to review it? And I said, sure. And it's really a fun game. I would never turn down a game of this if someone wanted to play it. Absolutely great game. Just fun. But it's not one that me personally, I would not want to pull out all the time as well. And that was the distinction for me. So, I mean, and you've got, you know what I'm talking about. You've got plenty of games in your collection from that side of things. So that's just something I wanted to highlight. It's available at Target right now. You can buy it for $30 at Target, which again is a massive achievement. That's what people want from a designer standpoint, right? That's the game. People think are like, oh, I raised $1 million on crowdfunding. No, this is a game that's going to be in Target for the next 10 years. That's going to sell copies all across the nation. That's impressive. That's going to be where the designer makes more money. And so if you're looking as someone in the board game design things, that's the thing you want. Not that necessarily you raise $500,000 on crowdfunding and it doesn't sell at all at retail. So, you know, I like these examples as well. That's why it made the list. I'm going to put this out there. This next one on this list, it's going to be short, it's going to be brief, but I'm going to argue that this is one of the best games that you've never heard of, and I guarantee this is going to be one of the best games you've ever played. And this is Battle for Biternia. Battle for Biternia is a MOBA-esque game. Everyone's clamoring recently with the reviews that have come out for Guards of Atlantis 2, right? I have a copy of Guards of Atlantis, haven't reviewed it yet, haven't been able to play it, haven't had the right player counts to be able to give it the depth that it needs. But I would make the argument that if you only have 2 people, Battle for Biternia is going to be the best thing out there in the market if you want that style of game, period. Standees, pixelated, asymmetric powers, great mechanics. This is my Matt Damon on Jimmy Kimmel, right? I have been meaning to put this review out for literally a year because I think it's that good. And they launched a second campaign, got $16,000 Stone Circle of their $10,000 goal, and put out Pixelvania, right? 340 people, not a tremendous amount at all. $25 for this hero pack, $74 for the whole, and then $200 if you wanted to name your own demon. This is a great game, folks. This is a great, great, great game. If you have any interest in MOBA-esque lane asymmetric characters, this is the game to pick up. It's going to cost you a little bit more because this is a small publisher. But I'll argue that there's nothing else potentially better out there, especially if you only have the 2-player count. So I have to give them a ton of kudos. The learn to play is super easy. The depth and the strategy, though, is where this game shines. You're assigning programming orders, you're playing, you have to do it 1-1-1-1 before you can go back to the first one. Your abilities time through with the deck that you're playing them in. You respawn if you get knocked out, but it's going to cost you. It just works really well. And so I cannot give them enough praise for the product. They haven't gotten enough support, so anything I can do, including my review eventually when it will be out, because I waited for the new camera as well. So I'll run out of excuses. It'll be sometime soon-ish, trademark. But that's why we need to talk about it as well, because this is the type of game, just like Longshot, that deserves more accolades. There haven't been any updates on the page for almost a year, but I wouldn't be disappointed if they put out a little bit more in the future for it for someone like myself, because I wouldn't mind a couple other characters. And, you know, I'm probably going to pick up a copy of Pixelvania sometime in the future because I feel that strongly about it. This is literally a game that's right over here. I'm not joking about this game, folks. Like, people are gonna be like, oh, it's not even in his collection anymore, right? Nope, right here. It was on the shelf for, if you look back a year or two ago, I had it sitting on this shelf for a long time. It's not going anywhere. My wife played it with me. She liked it. That says it all right there. There you go. Shout out to them. Now, this other one. This is going to be in the lines of your Bad Companies, your Space Bases. This is Valeria Card Kingdoms. You've probably heard of it. Valeria Card Kingdoms, it's put out a bunch of expansions. But then Daily Magic went about a slightly different way because, you know, with all those other games that I mentioned, they're all competitive. This was Darksworn. This was the cooperative campaign scenario-based, you know, chapter, like 7 or so chapters game version that they put out. And people were like, whoa, cooperative version of it. I'm really intrigued by that. I'm really interested by that. I even said the same thing. The problem was you had to get the base game. And they put out a new edition of the base game as well. And I said, probably for the price point, I can't get it all. And I've seen mixed things about Darksworn since then, but it was relatively well received when it came to crowdfunding. Again, Daily Magic's not like a huge company. And they raised $190,000 with this campaign, 3,000 backers. That's good. Now, again, small sample size here on Board Game Geek. Only 138. Wow, I would have guessed I would have had a lot more than that because, I mean, you have 3,000 backers. That's really a small portion. 7.9 rating, though. Cooperative, Bad Company, space-based-esque game with a Machi Koro, whatever you want to call it, that sort of element of things, keep you engaged from a cooperative standpoint. Like, yeah, that has a niche because there's not very many of those. And Valeria Card Kingdoms, say what you will about it, the Valeria Card Kingdoms second reprint even has been a very good seller for them. The latest update on the crowdfunding page, which I'm not going to pull up for you because there's not really a whole lot of useful information for the talk at this point, was that they, you know, resold out of their second printing from this campaign when they reprinted it. And so there's going to be just more. And they're putting out a quality product. People like the Valeria line. You know, I have a review either coming out just before or after this video of Dice Kingdoms from their Valeria line as a roll and write. Again, a game my wife and I really liked, was really fun, easy to play, needed a little bit more variety, but overall a great game. So this is just another example of that. Are we going to see more in the future? I hope so, because cooperative, it's my niche, baby. I like it. So show me more. Now I'm going to talk to you about one that I have absolutely no clue I should be even qualified to talk about this, but this is from Whirligig Games. This is the second edition of John Company. Way too heavy for me, but you're a aristocracy, a family in the East Indian Trading Company. Not just trying to accumulate wealth, as you're often trying to do in these games, but reputation is what matters more. They say, based on the description, this is a game based on state-sponsored monopoly. It's an economic game where you actually don't control your own firm, but you're collectively guiding the company to secure positions of power as you steer its fate, its ultimate direction. That's going to benefit your own interest as well as other people's, because it's going to be difficult. You're going to have to negotiate with other people to do so. And if you don't, the whole company can fail and you can all lose the game as well. Why do I feel like I'm not necessarily qualified to talk about this game in that sense? Well, one, I mean, it's got a weight of over 4.0. I mean, that's outside of anything depth-wise, mechanically speaking, strategy-wise, that, you know, I can talk about. I just don't play games like this. I haven't played this one personally. I'm never probably going to play this one. But the interesting thing that I saw here was that when you talk about this one, right, like we talk about the re-editions getting, you know, more of the people who like it and just focusing in on them a lot. And so when you look at this, 8.4 with 1,400 ratings, and you have 1,200 ratings here of 7.4 with a game that's, you know, significantly older. You definitely have more of a bias of the people rating it there who really like it, I think. And again, there's nothing wrong with that, but that's also the issue and the problem with Board Game Geek rankings as a whole. Again, I've seen mixed feelings on this. I just know that if you like this style of game, there's not really a whole lot else out there like it with the system that I described as you having to cooperate and negotiate as a whole to steer this thing to go in your right direction, but also everyone else's direction at the same time. So, you know, personally speaking, this is one that I'll never play or end up my collection. But how do you feel about it? It raised over $750,000 when it came the second time around, which is, again, is freaking amazing from that standpoint. When you pull this up here and you go, wow, 9,000 backers. I guess that's the other thing I would love to see a comparison of in the future, right? Like rankings on Board Game Geek, the ratio of them to total number of backers. That would be an interesting test of the market, just out of curiosity. Now, it's not anything scientific, and clearly the things that go wider at retail are going to have more, but just, you know, a little food for thought there as a side tangent here. But that's John Company, and that's really all I have to say about it, and just wanted to highlight it because it's a significant game and it's making its mark. So there you go. Where are we going next? We're going a completely different direction. This is V-Sabotage, sort of the Stealth Commandos Assassin's Creed style, and they later did the Assassin's Creed game, but this was the one where they did a deluxe edition. They did like a Ghost expansion, and they put out a little bit of everything else with some of the other components, but this was the one that really emphasized more of a crawl style game with the stealth rather than the smash bash crash like you're used to. And it's got a respectable 7.7 on Board Game Geek. It delivered last year, and it's just kind of out there. It's only got 1,600 ratings on Board Game Geek, which again, it was kind of weird to me. It raised almost $500,000, almost 700,000 Canadian, and I just don't hear anything of it. I just don't hear anything whatsoever, good, bad, or the other. And I mean, this is, you know, very, very solid ratings and reviews across the board. Like people I've seen talk about it like it. But it's just, I don't ever hear anyone talking about it, or I haven't heard anyone talk about it since it launched. And that's sort of one of those weird things with this game. And I don't have personal experience with it, so maybe that's just my own personal bias showing again. And that's completely possible, you know, see John Company second edition, right? But this is one where I go, okay, does this one stand the test of time for people? Does this one get replaced by Assassin's Creed? Do you need one or the other? What's the differences? Do you feel strongly one way or the other? And that's why. I mean, it'd be a game that I'd love to try out, but these games are hard to get to the table. These are harder. I would make an argument now that I've been playing more of everything across the board. These are harder to get, you know, from a lifestyle side of things than, say, a Dungeon Crawl, than, say, a Cthulhu Death May Die, than, say, a Rise of Moloch, or that side of things. So I can see why this, you know, also has a limited shelf span even on my shelf, and I'm speaking from own experience, not putting words in anyone's mouth. The next one we're gonna go back to All Play's early days on crowdfunding, and this is Board Game Tables when they were formerly known as that. And this was the combination of Factory Funner, Bear Raid, and Ghost of Christmas. And I'll argue that this is the one that actually put them on the radar for a lot of people. This is the one that sort of kicked off everything. They raised almost $300,000, and this was the first one that I said, whoa, because I was familiar with Ghost of Christmas as the original Japanese trick-taking, because that was one of the half dozen or so games that I actually went through the process of importing from Japan, because you have to set up like a forwarding address, and then you have to collect all of them at the forwarding address, and then you have to forward them, and then it takes like 2 months from the forwarding. And so, yeah, was it worth it? No. I have very few of those games left, or even want to have a desire to play very few of those games, because I just did a poor job of selecting them. More nostalgia, more I think I'm going to like it, rather than it's actually a really good game. And I'm just a poor chooser of those things sometimes. You know how that is. But this is the one that sort of also led me to a different revolution in terms of what I like. Because this one had Ghost of Christmas. I thought I was going to like Ghost of Christmas. I played Ghost of Christmas with my family, and it fell completely flat. Just one too many different nuances or mechanics that went into the trick-taking style of things that they just didn't really like. And I think they added something slightly different than the original game, and so that was also a slight off-turn for me. However, I got a review copy for Factory Funner, and I will tell you, this is a game that's never going to leave my collection. It's going to be a game that I never want to play because of how brain-burning it is and how embarrassed I get by, you know, the humiliation because of how poor I am at playing this game. But it's an amazing, amazing game. I cannot tell you enough good things about this. So you can see I backed the Ghost of Christmas pledge level. But this is Factory Funner. I just cannot tell you how cool, how hard, how difficult, and how rewarding this game is. And it says 30 minutes, but you're going to have so much AP, even as a non-AP person, that it's going to drive you crazy, and you'll play it for an hour and 15 minutes. Does that sound like a game for you? Like I said, it's not going anywhere. I can see it up on the shelf behind the camera. But boy, howdy, few and far between, right? Like, that's a forever game, but wow, okay. But that's why we're talking about this one, because this was the campaign with all three of these. I have no clue about Bear Raid. I can't even talk about that auction stock market style game. But this was the one that put them on the radar. And as we just saw with the recently ending campaign with their four most recent, Sail, Chomp, Couture, and Mindspace, they're not stopping anytime soon. So like during campaign, mid-campaign, yeah, I mean, I went with the one game. I took my advice. I take my advice sometimes, right? I don't always listen to my own advice, right? Do what I say, not what I do. But I ended up with keeping a game of those three that I didn't think I'd even like in the first place. So that's why you try games new that you otherwise didn't think you may like. Batoku. Not like I'm talking about a game I just played, and we'll see where that goes, but there you go. Now we're going to go another interesting test point here. 2 years ago, we had the second iteration of Super Fantasy Brawl from Mythic. And all of the issues since then with Mythic. I mean, this campaign for the second edition of Super Fantasy Brawl as sort of a light style skirmish, going for objectives, not just smashing and bashing, having your three characters on the map, it raised almost $600,000, which is very impressive. And this is one, if I'm remembering correctly, I think I am, of the few IPs that they're keeping, and they're saying, okay, we're going to continue to do this one. Again, this one was one that always tempted me, that I looked at and I said, I think I would kind of like this, but I have a lot of these games and they're very hit or miss in terms of how they're different. And so I just, you know, the selecting and the combinations, I'm not good at that. And so that sort of makes me go back and forth. A lot of people really, really like this. I mean, they really liked what this was bringing from the two-player skirmish style. And with this round 2 pledge, you were getting 3 expansions, right? And some foils. With the Super Flan pledge here, if we scroll down here, you get the core, you get 2 expansions and a terrain pack. And $169 gets you everything. But the interesting aspect of this, right? If we go over to Board Game Oracle here, if I can find the right tab, you see that the base game, Radiant Authority, is only going to cost you $50 total. The rest of the expansions on Boardlandia right now for the lowest price points are under $18. So if you do the mental math there for a second, 18 times 5 plus 31, that puts you at about $120. And if you're getting them all from one place, right, that's going to be shipping. So if you give a $5 plus or minus, depending on the store, $125 free shipping. And now if you go back over this page and you say $169, and you're getting the terrain, you're getting some plastic tokens, a foil, and a neoprene kit and sleeves, you know, is that worth it for you? $40 extra, $45 extra, plus whatever the shipping was. I'm going to guess, without scrolling all the way down here, because it's a freaking massive page, I'm going to do it anyway. I'm going to guess shipping was going to cost you another $20 on this. Let's see, right here. The all-in shipping was going to cost you $34. So 34 plus 45, it's going to cost you almost another $80. Was $80 worth a terrain expansion, a kit expansion, a neoprene kit, as well as a sleeves, a set of sleeves. $80, folks, $80. That's why crowdfunding nowadays is risky too, because now you're not talking $5 or $10. It's a push, you know, one way or the other. It's even the $15 if you're like a Chip Theory. You're talking 80 freaking dollars. And we don't really know what's going to be the life of this going forward. We haven't really heard anything future-wise from Super Fantasy Brawl from Mythic either. I mean, you go over to the blog page on Mythic, and the last announcement was just this, right? There's 2 articles as a whole. The initial announcement and just the core experience. No other updates on the other page. So, I mean, that's just the question. Where is this going to end up? If you are a fan of this, can you get more of it? Is it going to be discontinued? Are we going to see more lines of it? Is it just going to be reproduced at what we've already got? You know, again, probably a 4 or 5, and, you know, still sitting at about a 4 or 5. It'd be a game that I'd love to try, but I'm not going to go out of my way and search for it or try and get a copy at this point either. So take that for what you will. You know, there you go. Next up, we're going to talk about Portal Games. Portal Games, their first venture over in a GameFound was 2 years ago, and that was the re-edition, the deluxeification, the everything, the Book of Adventures, smattering 37,000, it was more like 50, scenarios from Robinson Crusoe, and they plastified the living heck out of this game. And that was a little divisive because they threw all the plastic in with the gameplay content and they didn't really allow you to sort it out nearly as much as people like me tend to like, either getting, okay, give me the options, don't just make me get the plastic and make me pay more just to get the actual gameplay content that I want. I mean, it raised, you know, 2.3 million pounds, I think. And that's a ton of freaking money. This game was beloved. Did it need a new edition? Did it need a new edition? Did you get a whole bunch of a lot of stuff? Yeah. Did you get a whole bunch of promos? Could you get a whole bunch of the other stuff that was hard to get and out of print? Yeah, absolutely. That was a great thing. However, they also said you were going to be getting it, you know, I think February of 2022, right? Wow, March 2023, here we are. Let's take a look. I mean, here you go. Here are the stretch goals, the models, everything else that went in it, the gameplay stuff, all the decks and the expansions and the promos and all the newcomer stuff and all the oldcomer stuff. And do you want it even sun-dropped? Here you go. You can break it all down. Just tons and tons and tons of stuff. However, we go over to the latest update, which was almost a month prior to me filming this, update 47. This is the thing I can't understand. And then I would have... And I would love someone to clarify this for me in the comment section if I'm reading this wrong, right? They are still working on the files at the beginning of February, which means that they haven't sent all this stuff to the printer that was wrong in the first place. But yet somehow they go down here and they say, delivery estimates somehow in Europe are still going to be April, and in USA, North America, it's still going to be in May. I mean, that's literally 2 months from now. You can't do production and shipping from China in 2 months. It takes at least like 4. So if things haven't even been sent to the printer, you haven't put an update out at the time of me filming this that they've been sent to the printer, they usually take about a month to print, unless I'm, you know, missing a few other updates that say all the other stuff is printed, and these are just minor production issues, minor reprints, and they've already got the masses reprinted. Well, I mean, that's a different issue, but I don't get that sense from this. So, you know, are you going to get it before Q3? No. Are you going to get it maybe at the end of Q3? Yeah, that's what it looks like. Which puts you a year and a half out late, which is, it's not great. It's not horrible. It is what it is. You're going to get it, and hopefully it's going to be a super good product. But that's what you get when you miniaturize and plastifies the hell out of a game that really didn't necessarily need it, or you put a company that isn't used to doing a lot of the miniatures and that sort of thing. And this was a big, big scoping project. So I'm not surprised at all it was delayed whatsoever. So, I mean, at least the final product will hopefully be good. Hopefully it'll live up to people's expectations. And if you're one of those completionists and you got everything, awesome. I hope it meets and exceeds all of your expectations from that standpoint. But there you go. Next, we're going to talk about Doomlings. Doomlings was one of those light sort of party style games where you've got like 17 different things that you can modify these little Doomlings of. And there's different aspects, there's different attributes, there's different ways of scoring, set collection, pattern matching, all of those things. And it was one of those that it really caught my eye because the aesthetic was a little bit different. And it seemed to have just a little bit more crunchy gameplay. It's got a 7.0 rating on Board Game Geek, and it raised a ton of freaking money. And now it's widely available even places like Target. And they are doing a second crowdfunding come the middle of this month for more expansions. Here you can see it. Again, like I said, $650,000, which was not insignificant. They had a gold box. They had a little bit of the, what was it? Casting Shadows, Unstable Unicorns. That's more of the vibe that I was going for here to describe it as, with 10,000 backers. And so it was a relatively good price point, and they went very much that model, right? They did a lot of exclusives. They did, you know, just that aspect of things with early birds and gold editions that are going to give you extra Kickstarter stuff down here, as well as extra expansions. And I think it just looks like a cool, light, fun style party game that I could bring up to the cabin with my family during the summer. I'd love to get a copy still just to try it out, and so I'd love to be able to do that. But I mean, it's probably one that I would be more than willing to play. But again, I'm, you know, how eager am I going to pick it up either way? The interesting thing is how much of this stuff will be better the second time around? Will there be reprints? What is the price point going to look like differently? Again, during campaign, I was probably 5 or 6, to be frank with you. Again, I'm probably about the same. I'd love to try it. I can see myself going either way on it because it's light, because I think my kids would love it. That'd be the main enticement. And, you know, I have cousins, our kids, our nieces. I have nieces and nephews as well that would probably be about this right age that would love this sort of thing as well. A little bit of something just unique, a little bit of step up, and a little bit aesthetic pleasing that allows it to get to the table a little bit easier. So Doomlings, I mean, we'll see. March 14 is going live with the second one. So hopefully we'll get a little bit of taste or smattering of what's going to be entailed with that one when it comes live. Now, this is probably one of the other biggest ones on the list. I probably should have put this one further on the list. It raised $5 million almost. And it was very interesting when it actually launched. Everdell, the complete collection, as well as the 2 new expansions, Mistwood and New Leaf. It's a little bit of a tongue twister there. 31,000 people got it. And what you saw when the crowdfunding campaign originally launched was people selling a whole bunch of their copies, because if you bought all of it during this campaign, it was actually cheaper than if you had piecemealed it out during all the other campaigns. I guess that's the blessing and curse, right? If you're an early adopter, you actually paid more. If you're a late adopter, you're actually getting a benefit, which is not usually the case. We usually see the opposite. And I have Everdell. I have the first 2 expansions. I don't have these 2 expansions. I kind of like one of the expansions. I'm not really a big fan of 2 of the other expansions that I have. I've been meaning to do a review for now like a year. I just haven't gotten around to it because I just have mixed feelings on it, and it's a lighter style worker placement that the aesthetic is there, but the actual mechanistic interest isn't always as high for me. I like the card tableau action building system, but I'm not as big a fan as several of the sideboards that went along with it, including like the river and the mountains. So again, I could see myself going either way. I know this offered, I think, like a new solo mode or something as well, but offering a little bit more complexity in addition. So let's take a look real quick. Like I said, here you go. Starling Games, 31,000, raised a ton of money. And the 2 new, you have a train station as well as night weaving solo 2-player mode. So I don't know. The complete collection, again, was only $200, which again sounds like a lot. But for all 5 expansions, the Wooden Tree, which is the deluxeified Wooden Tree, and the base game, that's actually, you know, relatively good. 6, I mean, that's $30 a pop, essentially. 35, less than $35 a pop. So take that for what you will. The only question is, do you need all of them? Do you want all of them? Like I just said, I really don't prefer some of them. Now, this train one is probably more appealing to me. The meeples are awesome. I will say that about a lot of this stuff. But it just felt like some of it was just disjointed, and especially if you play with more than one of them, it doesn't really cohesively work as well for me, and I guess that's my big issue. And maybe I should go play it again so I can get more concrete thoughts on this, since it's been a long time. But again, I was never tempted by this. So again, I would be interested in picking up like the New Leaf or the Mistwood expansion to try it out with like the base game, or maybe one of the expansions that I actually like. But it's not like a must-have expansion for me right now. But I'd be interested to hear you guys in the comment section below to say, okay, is this actually that good? Do you like these expansions over other ones? Are these worth getting? What would the order of your ranking of the expansions to get? What would they look like? So that's more of the question right now, especially as those having the complete collection. And I see people selling it on the secondary market for more than what they played. Say what you will. That's true. So something to think about as well from that aspect, because sometimes that happens and sometimes it doesn't. Buyer beware. Seller beware. Last up here, we're talking Magna Roma. It's a Rome-based tile layer game with endgame asymmetry bonuses, as well as just a generalized city builder for 1 to 4 players. You know, it raised 184,000 Australian dollars on crowdfunding, and that's not insignificant with almost 1,600 backers. The interesting thing on this game was that you're placing these tiles next to other adjacent tiles, and on the sides of the tiles, they're going to actually be connecting, and by how they connect, that's going to give you resources that you're producing on a turn-by-turn basis, and that's going to allow you to expand even further. Tile laying games are very interesting. What's your gimmick? What's your mechanic? How is it different than other tile laying games? What makes it stand apart? That's sort of the question. And I really don't have sort of an answer. It's got a Board Game Geek rating of 7.3 at this point. So, I mean, that's not bad. That's actually about Acropolis. And Acropolis was one of those games that people had sort of down as their top 10 list for 2022. So, I mean, right? That's how you compare it, I guess. Original fulfillment here was actually supposed to be May 2022, but it looks like they actually fulfilled it towards the end of the year per the latest couple updates, sort of like November, December, January at this point. However, if you go back up to the latest update here, they actually give a teaser of potentially an upcoming project or an expansion or something along those lines for another project from Arcona Games in the near future, maybe even 2023. They link to their Facebook and they don't give a whole lot of other information. But if you're a fan of tile layers, I mean, this might be one to check out. Again, I didn't even remember this one. So for me, during the campaign, it's probably a 3. Post-campaign here, I'm up for a good tile layer. I like a good tile layer. I would try this if someone brought it to game night. I'd be a 5, 5.5 at this point. But I'd also like to see, again, how does it stand up compared to the other ones that I have, considering I also just bought Isle of Skye, the big box, you know, with the extra there. I don't really need any more because I also have Acropolis in my collection. I also have Sorcerer City. You know, I've got a bunch of others. So would it actually beat out some of those other ones from that aspect? And that's a big unknown at this point. So I wouldn't be trying to pick it up personally either. There you go. That's all 13. That was a long list. Which one of those did you back? How will you feel about them? Where are they now? Are they still in your collection now? Will you still play them now? That's the interesting aspect of things. And that's why I like talking about these 2 years ago, right? Like, how many of these do you actually remember? How many of these do you still have? How many of these do you still have as much interest in? So again, my thoughts thrown in there along the way, how I felt then, how I feel now, everything else in between. I love doing these, so let me know what you want to see more in the future. And as always, stay classy. Thanks for watching. Thanks for tuning in. Thank you for getting me to 7K. The goal is 10K by the end of the year, so let's see if we can do it. Party on, Wayne. Party on.